Tess spends the night in a rental house where she meets a mysterious young man. When she discovers a labyrinthian maze of tunnels beneath the house, she must escape the horrors inside to save her life. On a stormy night in Detroit, Tess arrives at 476 Barbary, the rental house she booked while she's in town for a job interview. When she opens the lockbox containing the keys, she finds that they're missing. She calls the property manager, Bonnie, who doesn't answer. Tess looks around at the other houses and wonders why no lights are on. She returns to the car and, seconds later, sees the light from a window. Keith answers the door, so Tess asks him who he is. He says he's renting the place and they realize they've been double booked. He asks if she'd like to come inside and she hesitates for a moment but eventually enters. Inside, Tess asks Keith to pull up his reservation email so she can check it. He's slightly annoyed by her request but searches for his phone while she heads to the bathroom. She passes the bedroom where she sees the disheveled sheets on the bed. In the bathroom, she sees Keith's electric toothbrush on the floor. In the living room, Keith startles Tess when he shows her the email. She sees his valid reservation and the two are unsure how to proceed. Tess says she'll find somewhere else to stay, but Keith suggests she stay in the house while searching for a hotel. Minutes later, Keith offers to make her some tea and shows her a bottle of wine the renters left. Tess is unsuccessful in her search for a hotel, and Keith remembers there's a medical convention explaining the no vacancies. He recommends she take the bedroom, and he'll sleep on the couch for the night. She tries to decline, but he insists, then she confesses her problem with unclean sheets. Moments later, the sheets spin in the washer as Keith carries Tess's luggage inside. Tess goes to the bedroom and spots Keith's wallet on a table. She finds his driver's license and takes a picture of it. Later, she hands Keith his wallet before heading to the bathroom to wash up. Keith waits for Tess at the kitchen table. He wants to open the wine while she's there so she'll see he didn't put anything in it. She sits across from him and he pours himself a glass of wine. He asks why she's in Detroit, and she says she has a job interview tomorrow with Catherine James, a documentary filmmaker. Later, Tess shares her history of letting her previous partners walk all over her. She believes being a woman is more difficult because they must always be careful, while men can go through life recklessly and be fine. When the laundry finishes, Keith helps Tess with the bedding, and she finds his goofy personality charming. Afterward, they say their goodnights before he closes the door. That night, Tess wakes up when she hears a strange noise from the hallway. When she turns around, she sees the door ajar and Keith asleep on the couch. She hears Keith talking in his sleep. She approaches him as the basement door quietly closes behind her. Tess touches Keith's arm and he jolts awake, surprising her. She asks if he opened her door, and he says no, so she apologizes and returns to the bedroom. The following day, Tess finds Keith's note wishing her luck on the interview. Outside the house, Tess places the keys in the lockbox. She sees the rundown houses on the street, wondering why none of them had any lights on. Tess stares at Keith's driver's license picture in a coffee shop and smiles. Seconds later, Catherine enters, and they begin the interview. After the positive meeting, Tess mentions she's staying in Brightmoor and Catherine warns her about the area. When Tess returns to the house, a homeless man chases her, and she's able to close the door just as the man reaches it. The man wants her to leave the house, but she fearfully tells him to go away. Minutes later, Tess reports the man to the police, but they have no available units. In the bathroom, Tess calms herself down and sits on the toilet. When she sees no toilet paper, she searches the house. In the basement, she finds the toilet paper at the bottom of the stairs and grabs a roll. The basement door closes and locks her inside. Tess sits on the stairs and realizes she has left her phone in the bedroom. She also has the house keys in her pocket, so Keith won't be able to get in. She tries the basement window but can't open it. Tess notices a rope on the shelf and pulls on it. A secret door opens on the wall, leading to a dark hallway. She decides against entering and returns to the stairs. Minutes later, she props a mirror at an angle to allow the light from the basement to reflect onto the hallway. She spots a doorknob on the left side of the wall at the end of the hallway. She cautiously walks down the corridor and opens the door to a small, filthy room with a soiled bed and a camera on a tripod. Next to the bed is a grimy bucket and a bloody handprint on the wall. The unsettling sight spooks her, so she runs back to the basement. Tess hears Keith knocking at the front door, so she bangs on the window to get his attention. Fortunately, they open the window, and she hands Keith the keys. In the house, Tess frantically explains the dungeon-like room in the basement and says they both need to leave. Keith tells her to calm down because the things she describes aren't concerning. Tess is adamant about leaving, but he stops her and says he'll check the basement quickly and he'd like her to stay upstairs in case he gets locked in. Afterward, Keith heads to the basement while Tess waits in the kitchen. After a few minutes, she descends the basement steps and calls out if he sees the room. He answers that he does, but when she tells him to come back, he doesn't respond. Tess notices the basement door closing, so she quickly runs up the stairs and uses a chair to prop open the door. Moments later, she heads down the dark hallway, but Keith isn't in the small room. At the end of the hallway, she discovers a door leading to a subterranean tunnel. At the top of the stairs, she yells out for Keith and hears his voice faintly calling her name, begging for help. She contemplates leaving, but decides to go down to search for him. At the bottom of the stairs, she takes a left turn, where a metal gate opens to an extended passageway. As she inches forward, she finds 4 empty metal cages with dog bowls. Unexpectedly, Keith quickly crawls toward her and says he got bit by someone down there. She says they must go back the way they came in, but he says that's where the person was. Suddenly, a large, deformed, and unclothed woman, the mother, runs up from behind Keith. She grabs his head and repeatedly smashes it on the wall, ending his life. 2 weeks later, TV sitcom actor AJ cheerfully rides his convertible while singing along to the radio. Seconds later, he receives a call from his agents informing him his co-star, Megan, contacted the studio about disturbing allegations against him. His agents tell him the allegations are severe and he'll be fired from the show. AJ's initial reaction is to scorn Megan, and he insists he never did anything he's being accused of. AJ's agents add that the Hollywood Reporter will run a story about it tomorrow. He ends the call, pulls over to the side of the road, and is in shock. The next day, AJ meets with his financial advisor, who tells him he'll have no money left in 3 months. He advises him to sell his properties in Detroit to keep himself afloat, and due to the nature of the allegations, he'll drop him as a client. The next day, at the Detroit airport, AJ sees the Hollywood Reporter article has dropped. He gets inside his rental car and speaks with his publicist, Robert, who advises against talking to Megan and him leaving California. He explains he isn't running away but is in Detroit to liquidate his assets. Later, at Bonnie's office, AJ picks up the keys to his property, 476 Barbary. Outside the house, AJ wonders whose car is parked out front. Inside, he sees the open basement door, takes the chair and kicks the door closed. He sees Tess and Keith's things scattered around the house and gives Bonnie a call. She assures him no renters are currently listed, and the last ones left weeks ago. That night, AJ meets up with his friend Everett at a bar, where he describes the encounter with Megan. AJ says she initially told him no, but she came around after his persistence. Later, AJ stumbles home drunk, leaves Megan an apologetic phone message and tells her to call him back. The following morning, he throws up in the bathroom and sees Keith's toothbrush. He looks through Keith and Tess's things but can't find any form of identification. Moments later, he sees Tess's car keys on the dining table and looks at the basement door. He calls out at the top of the stairs and hears a noise. Minutes later, he takes a small knife and a flashlight from the kitchen. In the basement, AJ sees Tess's strange mirror set up and hears the noise from behind the wall. He sees the rope and pulls on it, opening the door. He enters the hallway and opens the door to the room with the camera. Minutes later, he researches whether underground rooms can be listed as square footage when selling a house. Later, AJ replaces the bulb in the basement and uses a steel tape measure to estimate the square footage of the hallway and the small room. As he backs away to the wall, he notices it's a door leading to the subterranean tunnel. He continues measuring the tunnel until he reaches the bottom of the stairs. In the lower tunnel, he spots the metal cages and measures the area where they are tucked in. A few feet away, he discerns the light coming from a doorway. Inside the room is a TV on the floor, playing a how-to video on breastfeeding. Suddenly, someone pulls the steel tape measure, so AJ lets it go. Frightened, he holds the knife and the flashlight in front of him, but he runs deeper into the tunnel when he hears a strange noise. He trips and his flashlight malfunctions, switching on and off. He points the flashlight toward the mother approaching him. AJ fearfully gets up and runs but falls into a dirt pit on the floor. In the pit, he sees a wound on his arm. Then he sees the grate on top close over him. Beside him, Tess signals him to be quiet. 40 years ago, Frank leaves 476 Barbary, and the surrounding well-kept houses have manicured lawns. At the store, a woman helps Frank with a shopping list of plastic sheets, diapers, and latex gloves. She asks if they're delivering the baby at the local hospital, but he says it'll be a home birth. She then hands him an educational videotape about breastfeeding. Frank spots a woman wearing a yellow dress across the street in the parking lot. He follows her car home and parks a few houses away. He then grabs a power company uniform from the trunk of his car. Minutes later, Frank knocks on the woman's door and pretends to check the house for any power problems. He unlocks the bathroom window before leaving the house. Outside 476 Barbary, Frank's neighbor, Doug, informs him they're selling their house. Doug asks him if he has any plans to do so, but Frank says he isn't going anywhere. Inside, Frank opens the basement door, and a woman's screams can be heard. In the present, Tess ties a cloth over AJ's wound and tells him not to freak out around the mother because it upsets her. Suddenly, the mother lowers a feeding bottle through the grate and Tess tells AJ to drink it because she wants them to be her babies. Tess suckles from the bottle, but AJ refuses to. AJ's refusal to nurse infuriates the mother, who opens the grate and jumps into the pit while Tess and AJ cower in fear. The mother hugs Tess, then screams in AJ's face before dragging him out of the pit. She takes him to the room with the TV as he struggles against her grasp. Meanwhile, Tess climbs out of the pit and takes the flashlight and knife AJ dropped. She walks through the tunnel and sees the mother forcing AJ to breastfeed from her. He gags and tries to move his face away, but the large woman overpowers him. In the tunnel, Tess taps on the steel tape measure on the floor, alerting the mother. Tess frightfully runs back to the basement door, but it's locked, so she breaks the window and crawls out. Outside the house, the homeless man, Andre, helps Tess out just as the mother reaches for her. Tess tells Andre about AJ and they need to save him, but he says they shouldn't have gone there in the first place. He remarks the mother isn't the worst thing in the house and tells her to go with him to the water tower. The petrified woman wants to seek help, so Andre says she should avoid the house at night because the mother comes out when it gets dark. In the tunnel, AJ sees a bell attached to a string on the wall. He sees a wooden door with cables leading inside it. The mother approaches him cautiously, afraid of what's behind the door, and backs away slowly. Meanwhile, Tess finds a gas station and asks to use the phone. Inside the underground room, AJ sees trash on the floor and smells an unpleasant stench. He sees the yellow dress the woman from 40 years ago wore. A sudden noise startles him and he sees Frank, now a bedridden older man on a bed. Later, Tess talks to the police who don't take her seriously due to her appearance. She tells them there's a man in grave danger in a house she just escaped. Underground, AJ promises Frank there'll be police there soon to rescue him, and Frank looks panicked. He points to the side table and AJ moves it closer to the bed. Outside the house, the cops don't buy Tess's story and think the only crime that occurred was her breaking the window. The cops leave without checking the house. In the underground room, AJ sees a shelf with videotapes labeled with women's names. He plays one entitled Gas Station Redhead. At the same time, Tess breaks into the house and grabs her keys from the table. Underground, AJ stops the tape and looks traumatized. He turns to Frank and admonishes him for the evil things he did to the woman on video. Frank then takes a revolver from the bedside table and shoots himself. Outside, Tess hits the mother with the vehicle, pinning her to the side of the house. Underground, AJ takes Frank's gun and looks for a way out. Meanwhile, Tess walks back down the tunnel and accidentally gets shot by AJ. Seconds later, AJ helps her up and apologizes. Then they make their way out of the house. But the mother is no longer on the car's hood. AJ dropped his keys in the tunnel and refuses to return there. Then they head to the water tower, where Andre leads them into his hiding spot. Andre tells them the mother has lived in the house for 40 years. Her father, Frank, has been abducting women, impregnating them, and doing the same to his children. The mother is the result of decades of inbreeding. AJ is remorseful for hurting Tess and wishes to fix all his past mistakes by doing the right thing and getting her to a hospital. Andre discourages them from leaving while it's dark and suggests they stay with him until dawn. He's lived there for 15 years and the mother has never found him. Suddenly, the mother breaks through the wall behind Andre, rips his arm off, and bludgeons him with it. Shortly after, AJ and Tess run outside but can't climb over the barbed wire fence. So they run up the water tower with the mother after them. AJ sprints to the top quickly, not bothering to help Tess. At the top, Tess tells AJ to use his gun, but he clumsily drops it over the railing. They dread this might be how they perish because the mother will never stop looking for them. But then, AJ realizes he can still get away if he uses Tess to slow the mother down. He grabs Tess and tells the mother to come to get her baby before tossing Tess off the water tower. Tess helplessly falls toward the ground. Then the mother dives down, reaching for her. Moments later, AJ sees Tess lying on top of the mother with a pool of blood surrounding the deformed woman's head. After AJ heads down, he finds Tess alive, and he apologizes for what he had to do because he panicked. Suddenly, the mother screams awake, chokes AJ, and gouges out his eyes with her long fingernails before splitting his head open. Seconds later, the mother whimpers when she sees the wound on Tess's stomach and wants to take her back home. Tess grabs the gun next to her and sympathetically shoots the mother's head. Shortly after, Tess gets up from the ground